What if I told you that the ultimate tropical retirement dream, the pristine beaches, the luxury condo, and the breathtakingly young woman who treats you like an absolute king, is actually the most ruthless, mathematically optimized financial scam on earth? You think you are flying to paradise to finally be loved and respected, but you are blindly walking straight into a meticulously designed slaughterhouse for your life savings. I know this brutal reality better than anyone, because 3 years ago I bought that exact same illusion, and it cost me every single penny I ever had. If my catastrophic shipwreck saved you from making the exact same mistake, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notifications. Your support helps expose these invisible traps and prevents other naive men from losing everything they have worked for. I was nothing more than an unwitting angel investor funding a rapidly expanding local enterprise. While I was dutifully paying her rent and feeling like her ultimate provider, I had no idea there were two other retired Westerners simultaneously subsidizing her groceries, her allegedly sick mother, and the family farm. It is an invisible trap designed perfectly for lonely men who refuse to view their relationship through a cold, transactional lens. You might be watching this thinking you are far too smart to fall for it, just like I did. But the illusion was so flawlessly crafted, so profoundly intoxicating, that I didn't suspect a single thing until she asked for that very first, seemingly innocent favor. To understand how I fell for such a flawless illusion, you have to look at the suffocating emptiness of the life I left behind in Atlanta. For 35 long years, I worked as a senior microbiologist in a sterile, windowless corporate laboratory. I spent my days staring into microscopes, documenting the life cycles of bacteria, while my own life quietly evaporated around me. I never married, never had children, and never took those reckless chances that make a life memorable. My existence was perfectly stable, mathematically predictable, and utterly, devastatingly hollow. I was a ghost walking through fluorescent-lit hallways, completely invisible to the world. Every evening at exactly 6 o'clock, I would drive my sensible sedan back to a silent, heavily mortgaged suburban house. The crushing routine never varied: a microwave dinner for one, the glowing television serving as my only conversational partner, and a deafening quiet that seemed to echo off the walls. Weekends were merely a desperate exercise in killing time, wandering through hardware stores or meticulously organizing my garage just to feel a false sense of purpose. I was aging in fast forward, watching my hair turn gray and my relevance vanish, trapped in a society that discards older men the moment they stop producing. You cannot underestimate the psychological damage inflicted by decades of absolute romantic and physical invisibility. I went entire years without a woman holding my hand, without anyone asking how my day was, without a single soul looking at me with genuine admiration. When you are a 60-something bachelor in America, you are not a silver fox. You are just a tragic background character everyone politely ignores. I was slowly suffocating under the heavy, invisible weight of my own irrelevance. My fragile ego was starving for validation, desperate for just one final opportunity to feel strong, capable, and profoundly necessary to someone else. The brutal reality hit me on the day of my retirement party, a pathetic gathering in the break room featuring stale cake and forced applause from colleagues who barely knew my name. As I carried my small cardboard box of belongings out to the parking lot, a terrifying realization washed over me. I had a fully funded pension, a healthy savings account, and absolutely nothing to live for. My calendar was entirely blank for the rest of my natural life. I realized with sickening clarity that I had worked my entire adulthood merely to fund my own isolation in a comfortable prison. I refused to accept that my remaining decades would be spent trapped in the same lifeless routine, waiting for a catastrophic medical diagnosis in the relentless urban grind of Atlanta. Looking around my immaculate, empty living room, I finally understood that my meticulously planned American retirement was nothing more than a well-furnished waiting room for death. Late one sleepless night, illuminated only by the glow of my laptop screen, I began searching for an escape route, typing desperate queries about tropical climates, fresh starts, and vibrant cultures. I thought I was simply booking a flight to paradise, completely unaware I was actually signing my own financial death warrant. Stepping out of the airport into the thick, humid air of Bangkok felt like walking through a portal into a vibrant Technicolor universe, leaving the gray desolation of Atlanta completely behind me. The sensory overload of the bustling streets instantly breathed life into my stagnant veins. But the true revelation was meeting her for the first time. She was standing there in a simple sundress, radiating a youthful energy that immediately captivated my attention. When she smiled at me, it wasn't the polite, dismissive nod I was accustomed to receiving back home. It was a gaze of pure, unfiltered admiration that instantly melted away 35 years of deeply ingrained invisibility and profound loneliness. From that very first week, my new life unfolded like the most meticulously crafted, perfect movie script, and for the first time in my existence, I was undeniably the leading man. Every interaction we shared felt flawlessly choreographed to maximize my comfort and inflate my self-esteem. I was no longer the tragic background character aimlessly wandering the fluorescent hallways of a corporate laboratory. I was suddenly the charismatic hero of an exotic romance. She laughed at my mundane jokes with a musical joy, making me feel brilliantly witty and endlessly fascinating. It was a flawless cinematic experience, devoid of awkward silences or complications, designed to make an aging, forgotten man feel like he was standing at the absolute center of the universe. Our first romantic getaway to a secluded luxury resort in Phuket was an intoxicating plunge into absolute paradise, funded effortlessly by a pension that suddenly felt like immense wealth. I remember walking hand in hand along the powdery white sand, the crystal clear turquoise water lapping at our feet, feeling a profound sense of triumph. We stayed in a magnificent villa with a private plunge pool, ordering extravagant room service, while the tropical breeze gently rattled the palm trees. She treated every lavish dinner and sunset boat ride as if I were performing a daily miracle, showering me with breathless gratitude that deeply nourished my starved ego and cemented my delusion of being a powerful, benevolent provider. The daily acts of affection she bestowed upon me were a potent, addictive drug that I eagerly consumed without a single moment of hesitation. I would wake up every morning to find fresh coffee brewing and exotic fruits meticulously peeled and sliced, waiting for me on the sunlit balcony. She would gently massage my shoulders after a long day of sightseeing, her soft hands seemingly erasing decades of accumulated physical tension. It was an overwhelming, relentless flood of care and validation that I had never experienced, not even during my youth. Her constant physical touch and tender words created an impenetrable bubble of comfort, aggressively reinforcing the incredibly comforting lie that my presence alone was the sole source of her happiness. Beneath the warm Thai sun, surrounded by this constant stream of adoration, I experienced a sudden, miraculous resurrection of my masculinity and youth. The chronic aches and the creeping lethargy that had plagued my final years in Atlanta miraculously vanished, replaced by a surging energy that made me feel entirely invincible. When I looked in the mirror, I no longer saw a tired, graying scientist nearing the end of his useful life. I saw a distinguished, capable protector who was commanding his own destiny. She looked at my silver hair not as a symptom of decay, but as a badge of wisdom and stability, making me feel physically desirable in a way that utterly defied every brutal, unforgiving rule of human biology. Our evenings were an endless parade of romantic spectacles, each one designed to push me deeper into a state of intoxicating euphoria. We would share candlelit dinners on the beach, with the soft ocean waves providing the perfect acoustic backdrop to our intimate conversations. I would buy her beautiful, vibrant dresses, and watching her twirl enthusiastically in the boutique mirror gave me an immense sense of pride and accomplishment. I was the generous king, showering my devoted queen with the beautiful things she had been unfairly denied by her humble upbringing. The sheer delight in her eyes when I handed over my credit card was, in my foolish mind, the absolute purest expression of authentic, unconditional love. The conversations we shared during those balmy tropical nights felt incredibly profound, primarily because she was flawlessly reflecting my own deepest desires right back at me. When I spoke about my dreams of buying a quiet villa, tending to a small garden, and living a peaceful existence, she nodded with intense, wide-eyed enthusiasm. She effortlessly adopted my vision of the future as her own, explicitly confirming every hope I had ever harbored about spending my final years in quiet devotion. I firmly believed we were forging a deep spiritual connection, entirely blind to the terrifying reality that I was simply speaking into a customized echo chamber, designed to perfectly validate every single one of my desperate, aging fantasies. This meticulously engineered environment naturally cultivated an overwhelming feeling of absolute exclusivity and profound mutual salvation. I was absolutely certain that I was the singular, unwavering center of her entire universe, just as she had rapidly become the center of mine. In my mind, this was a beautiful symbiotic rescue mission. I was saving her from a life of exhausting poverty, and she was saving me from an agonizingly slow, irrelevant death in the same empty life I tried to escape. I never once questioned why a vibrant young woman would genuinely prefer the quiet company of a retired biologist, because acknowledging that mathematical impossibility would instantly shatter the gorgeous, fragile illusion I was so desperately clinging to. As the weeks turned into months, I willingly severed all remaining emotional ties to the bleak, miserable reality I had left thousands of miles behind. I simply stopped answering the infrequent emails from old colleagues, utterly consumed by this vibrant new universe where I was worshipped as a deity daily. My entire existence shrank down to the perimeter of our shared apartment, the local markets, and the warm, reassuring touch of her hand resting lightly on my arm. I felt completely insulated from the harsh realities of the world, comfortably wrapped in a thick, luxurious blanket of synthetic affection that shielded me from my own rapidly advancing mortality. I was floating blissfully in a permanent state of suspended animation. The absolute zenith of this devastatingly beautiful mirage occurred during a lavish sunset cruise I had chartered just for the two of us. Standing on the teak deck, surrounded by the shimmering expanse of the Andaman Sea, she wrapped her arms tightly around my waist and rested her head against my chest. In that specific, fleeting moment, I felt an overwhelming surge of triumphant victory over the bleak, lonely destiny society had assigned to me. I looked out at the brilliantly painted horizon and genuinely believed I had successfully cheated the universe, trading my empty retirement years for a guaranteed lifetime of passionate, devoted companionship. The intoxicating high was so intensely powerful that I absolutely refused to look down. My days became a blur of idyllic contentment, characterized by leisurely morning walks, afternoon massages, and the intoxicating feeling of being completely and utterly indispensable. I was enthusiastically funding a dream lifestyle, happily paying for her rent, her stylish new clothes, and the expensive dinners, firmly viewing these transactions as minor investments in our shared, glorious future. The financial cost felt completely irrelevant compared to the massive psychological dividends I was receiving every single hour of the day. I was hypnotized by the seamless, flawless execution of her affection, willfully ignoring the mechanical precision with which she managed my happiness. I was so busy enjoying the breathtaking scenery that I failed to notice the elaborate scaffolding holding it up. But the fundamental problem with a perfect movie script is that someone else is always sitting in the director's chair, carefully manipulating every single frame for maximum profit. I was simply the aging, wealthy actor who had been hired to play the role of the generous provider, blissfully unaware that my scenes were being efficiently scheduled around the shooting times of my replacements. Every tender touch, every whispered promise, and every look of adoration was just a highly rehearsed performance designed to keep the production fully funded. Looking back at those golden, euphoric months, I should have realized that this flawless, manufactured paradise was mathematically too good to be true. But I desperately, tragically, didn't want to see it. The devastating collapse of my meticulously funded paradise didn't happen with a dramatic argument. It happened on a spectacularly ordinary Tuesday afternoon while she was supposedly visiting her sick mother. I was sitting on the plush leather sofa of the luxury condo I had just drained my 401k to purchase in her name. Reaching under the cushions for the television remote, my fingers brushed against cold glass. It was a cheap plastic smartphone, entirely different from the expensive device I had proudly bought her. The screen was glaringly bright, unlocked, and vibrating violently, with a relentless, uninterrupted stream of incoming messages. My heart began to hammer against my ribs as I picked up the device, a cold sweat instantly forming on my forehead. I opened the messaging application, desperately telling myself it was merely a backup phone for her extended family. But the names on the glowing screen were unmistakably foreign. David from Manchester, Thomas from Seattle, Helmut from Munich. I tapped on the most recent conversation with Thomas, my hands trembling violently. There, staring back at me in agonizing high definition, were the exact same photos of the broken family roof she had sent me 3 days ago. The very same roof I had just wired $10,000 to urgently repair. I was suffocating in my own living room, rapidly scrolling through months of highly compartmentalized, synchronized deceptions. I watched in absolute horror as she flawlessly mirrored 3 completely different retirement fantasies to 3 different aging men. To Helmut, she was the quiet, submissive housewife eager to move to Germany. To David, she was the ambitious entrepreneur needing startup capital for a non-existent salon. The timeline was a masterpiece of logistical engineering, perfectly mapping out my golf afternoons and afternoon naps to schedule video calls with my replacements. I wasn't her exclusive provider, her savior, or her heroic king. I was simply the morning shift in a highly optimized emotional sweatshop. The panic gripping my chest turned into a searing physical pain as the true magnitude of my financial ruin crystallized in my mind. The luxury condo I had bought, the endless stream of medical emergencies, every single dollar was part of a triple-dipping tax strategy applied to a diversified portfolio of delusional Westerners. I frantically opened the banking app left logged in on this burner device. The balance wasn't just healthy, it was astronomical. Transfers were pouring in from all over the globe, utterly dwarfing the pathetic remnants of my biology pension. The relationship was nothing but a highly lucrative, meticulously managed business, and I had just funded her early retirement. Before my mind could even process the sheer volume of this betrayal, The heavy oak front door of the condo swung wide open. She walked in, laughing brightly on her primary phone, carrying bags of expensive designer clothes I hadn't paid for. She froze the exact second she saw me standing in the center of the room, her secret operational phone clutched tightly in my shaking hand. The vibrant, loving energy she usually projected instantly vanished, replaced by a cold, calculating emptiness that chilled me to my very core. There were no tears, no dramatic apologies, and absolutely no attempts to explain away the undeniable evidence glowing brightly between us. The beautiful, devoted girl who had tenderly rubbed my shoulders and listened to my pathetic small-town dreams was completely gone, evaporated into thin air. In her place stood a shrewd, untouchable business operator calculating the immediate legal liability of a compromised asset. The gorgeous tropical scenery around me suddenly felt like cheap cardboard cutouts collapsing under glaring stage lights. She didn't scream or beg for forgiveness. She simply tilted her head, looked at me with the dead, unapologetic eyes of an accountant closing a bankrupt ledger, and calmly held out her hand to take back her property. The eviction from my meticulously funded paradise took less than 48 hours, executed with the chilling efficiency of a corporate liquidation. She didn't just kick me out of the luxury condo I had bought with my drained retirement accounts, she systematically dismantled my dignity. As I scrambled to pack my meager belongings, she stood by the door, mocking my trembling hands and my graying hair, weaponizing my advanced age against me. The sweet girl who once called me her protector now looked at me with open disgust, loudly berating me as a pathetic, useless old man in front of the building's security guards. Standing on the scorching Bangkok pavement with a single suitcase, the absolute totality of my financial ruin crushed the breath from my lungs. Every dollar of my pension and carefully hoarded investments had been meticulously siphoned into a legally impenetrable labyrinth of local bank accounts bearing her name. I was utterly paralyzed by a profound sense of depersonalization, feeling like a ghost haunting my own life. I had no legal recourse, no local allies, and absolutely no money to fight back against a system designed to extract Western wealth. I was completely impotent, an invisible victim of a flawless business model. The agonizing journey back to the United States was a prolonged exercise in profound, suffocating shame. I felt exactly like a battered shipwreck survivor who had washed ashore on a barren beach with nothing but the clothes on his back, forced to watch the burning wreckage of his sunken ship sinking beneath the distant horizon. I had to beg a distant relative for a humiliating loan just to afford a cramped seat on a flight back to Atlanta. Every mile traveled felt like a brutal reminder of the arrogant fool who had flown out believing he had cheated the universe. Today, instead of sipping espresso on a sun-drenched tropical balcony, I spend my long, exhausting days driving strangers across Atlanta for Uber, watching their lives move forward while mine quietly fell apart, just to keep the lights on in this moldy motel room. My glorious retirement dream has been violently replaced by the brutal reality of climbing endless apartment stairs, desperately hoping for a $3 tip to afford my medication. It is a staggering contrast to the triumphant Technicolor arrival I experienced when I first stepped out of that airport, believing I was a wealthy king. The vibrant paradise I purchased was merely a rented hallucination, and the bill has arrived. If you are an aging Westerner thinking about retiring to Thailand, packing your bags with the delusion that your savings will buy you the exclusive loyalty of a beautiful woman decades your junior, I am begging you to wake up. Do not be the pathetic, naive fool I was. You are not uniquely charming, and your financial support is not romance. It is just your entry fee into a highly optimized, ruthless ecosystem. Protect your pension, protect your pride, and recognize the brutal truth before you end up exactly like me, alone in a life that suddenly felt cold and empty, completely bankrupt, and utterly invisible. If you are an aging Westerner sitting in a cold, empty house right now, convincing yourself that your accumulated wealth can genuinely purchase the exclusive devotion of a woman 4 decades your junior, I am begging you to wake up. Let me ask you something. Do you honestly believe she is ignoring the brutal biological reality of your age out of pure romance? You are not a silver fox, and your financial support is not an act of knightly provision. It is simply your mandatory entry fee into a highly optimized, completely transactional business model where you are merely one share in a diversified portfolio. You must strip away the romance and look at the terrifying mathematics of your situation. Do not accept vague schedule gaps, and notice if she strictly compartmentalizes her communication with burner phones. Never blindly send cash for a sudden family emergency or a broken roof, because you are likely paying a synchronized triple-dipping tax alongside 2 other retired Americans who think exactly like you do. Stop feeding her your desperate retirement fantasies, because she is merely mirroring your dreams to build a customized echo chamber that keeps you docile and generous. Protect your pension, protect your pride, and audit your relationship today before you lose everything. Now you know the absolute truth of this ecosystem, and the choice is entirely yours. You can either play this ruthless game with your eyes wide open, or you can continue to be played by a young operator who is fundamentally smarter than you. I did not survive this humiliating ordeal to find a happy ending. I survived solely to become a towering lighthouse, built directly upon the jagged rocks of my own catastrophic shipwreck. I exist now only to shine a harsh, unforgiving light through the beautiful fog, desperately warning other naive ships to turn back before they crash against the very same devastating shore.